Welcome back to the Mark Moses Show, only right here on Sports Radio 95.9 The Fan. Right now here on the Club 52 hotline, a very nice man who covers the NBA for BleacherReport.com. His name is Dan Favale. And yes, I know we're a week old, but we're going to preview a new season of NBA basketball. Dan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. We joked about this off air. We're both excited basketball is back. Is this correct, Dan?
It's beyond correct.
That's good stuff. Let's start with the biggest move, and it's new to this season. LeBron going back to the Cavs. And I know you wrote about this as well. They lose their opener. They come back. They beat Chicago. What is your take so far on the LeBron-led Cleveland Cavaliers here in the early season?
I think this is what we should have expected. They don't look incredible. There's flashes of this offensive dominance. I mean, they've been able to get out on the break a lot through their first couple of games, but the defense is a work in progress, and it might never fully be good because they don't have a rim protector. And the offense is still a work in progress. LeBron, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love are still trying to figure out one another's tendencies. The Cavs are still trying to figure out how they want to play. How many threes do they want to shoot? How many post-ups should Kevin Love and LeBron get? So this is all work in progress. And they looked really good in the preseason, but you're playing against inconsistent rotations and stuff like that. So you really need the regular season for them to be their preseason. So for the first 10 to 20 or maybe even more games, it's going to look a lot like the 2010-2011 Miami Heat, where they sort of toil around 500 maybe and then get out ahead of the rest of the field later on in the season.
I actually like Tristan Thompson, and I didn't think I was going to say that, but when I look at that game last Friday night against Chicago where he's getting all these offensive rebounds, is he one of these guys we need to look out for that might blossom playing with LeBron there in Cleveland?
Absolutely. LeBron makes everyone around him better, and just the hard work that he's been putting in, just sort of rebounding, keeping the ball moving, which he wasn't doing last year, and just sort of having this guidance and knowing his role has just been astounding. And it's been done fairly quickly, too. I mean, we're only a couple games into the regular season, and he's already just looking like a more polished player. And that's part of the LeBron impact. I think it's also better coaching, better direction, and just more experience. So he's definitely a player to keep an eye on. And I think as the season goes on, he'll sort of be one of those key players that sort of shift the tide of the Cavs season. Like, if he plays well, there's no telling what they can do in the Eastern Conference. And if he doesn't play so well, it does put them at sort of a disadvantage because of how shallow they are elsewhere.
We're here, Dan Favale, BleacherReport.com, covers the NBA, previewing a new season here. It's only about a week or so old. Let's go to Chicago then. Derrick Rose is healthy, then he's not healthy. I mean, what is your take on him and the Chicago Bulls team here on the new season?
I think it's good that the Bulls are built to compete without Derrick Rose, because even if there isn't going to be a serious injury, which we, in all honesty, don't want to see. We can criticize Derrick Rose, but we don't want to see him get injured. The NBA is better, more fun to watch when he's playing at his peak, and that's what he's sort of doing. Even the game where he sprained his ankle, he already had, I don't even know what his stat line was when he went down, but he had 20-plus points, and he was passing so well, using a combination of explosion and his jump shot, and it's just great to watch. But he's going to have those maintenance nights anyways. You have to sort of liken him to almost Dwayne Wade at this point, though not really. It's just he's going to need those days off, and things are going to happen. He even said the basketball gods are testing him right now, and his lower limbs are pretty much soggy paper at this point, so anything that happens could just take him out of the game. He could miss 2-3 weeks just like that, and it's good that the Bulls are built to compete without him. Pau Gasol helps a lot just as a scorer and playmaker, and they're still going to win games even if he has to sit. And I think that's what people need to realize. If he's ever going to be Derrick Rose again, this season is going to have to be that transition year where maybe he sits out every few games. He sort of gets his game legs back. And then maybe next year, he was able to stay healthy this year. That's when you sort of see him play better, maybe at that MVP level if the Bulls are lucky.
You know what's funny is my buddy Tim said it best, where Derrick Rose hurt his ankles trying to get offensive rebounds. Why does he think he's 6'10" around the rim? Does he understand that he doesn't need to go for those balls? That's what I'm confused on.
I think it's just his motor, and it's sort of, you look at guys across the league that sort of have it. They only know one speed. Like Russell Westbrook would be a good example. He's probably the best rebounder at his position, and you sort of wonder why he goes after those rebounds so hard, and he's just barreling into these big bodies that are down low trying to box him out. It's great to see, but you sort of liken it to diving for a loose ball in the stands during a preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you doing it? That's not necessarily your job, but it's good to see, and it's sort of a sign that he's not as conscious about his knee, which you want to see. You want him to be aware of it, but you don't want it to affect his play, and that's how he's sort of always played. So I think it's good. Obviously, if he gets injured, it's a catastrophe, but you can't walk on eggshells with these guys. He's a 20-something-year-old athlete, and he needs to play his game the way he's accustomed to playing it.
Cleveland and Chicago, everyone is saying, all right, these are the two contenders. But here in Florida, there's a team in South Florida and their fan base that thinks, no, wait, this is going to be a 3-horse race, and it's the Miami Heat. What do you think of the Heat so far with Bosh and Wade expanding their roles with no LeBron now?
It's incredible, and I think it actually shouldn't be incredible because I was one of the few people, and I'm probably just going to give myself a nice little hat tip here, who expected them to play really well because I've been watching Dwayne Wade when he plays, and I've been saying this all along. It's not about ability with him, it's about availability. So if he's able to stay healthy, the Heat have a top 10, top 12 superstar. And then we haven't seen Bosh, the superstar, in 4 years. We don't know how he's going to react as the number one option. He put up 24-10 with the Raptors frequently, and while they didn't go to the playoffs, he had no supporting cast. The Heat, while shallow, have given him a supporting cast. He has Wade. He never had that in Toronto. He has Deng. He never had that in Toronto. And it's just amazing to see how shocked people are at how well they're playing. I'm not sure if it's sustainable. I don't think long-term they can't compete with the Cavs or the Bulls. If the Bulls stay healthy, that's a big caveat there. Mm-hmm. But they could be a top 4 Eastern Conference team, especially with injuries to Bradley Beal. The Hornets don't look great. So there's not a lot of threats. So the Heat may have pulled off one of the biggest offseason victories ever just because they lost one of the all-time greats, and they're still going to wind up being a top 4 team in their conference. We know the Cavs didn't come anywhere near doing that. So you really owe a lot of admiration to Bosh and Wade for really just picking up the slack and proving that they can still play. Because this Heat team, again, I don't think they're championship contenders, especially when you look at who's out west, but they could be a top 4 team in the East.
See, this one I understand, and I'd love to get your take on this, is I watch all the Heat playoff games. There are times when Bosh, it's like, here's the ball, go do something, and he wasn't, I'll just take this jump shot. That's what I understand about him. Like now he's like, oh, well, I'm gonna go to the lane. I'm gonna do this. He could have done that with LeBron, or am I missing something here, Dan?
I think you definitely could have, but the Heat system was sort of built around those driving kicks or take those perimeter shots, let LeBron attack the rim, let Wade attack the rim, and everyone else stand around them, so to speak. And you have Chris Anderson, who might have cleaned up misses, but more than 80% of Bosh's made baskets came off assists last year, so they turned him into a spot-up shooter. That was his role, and I'm sure after 4 years, that was still hard to adjust to. You have to think about where he was getting the ball in Toronto, and not only was he transitioning to a third option in Miami, but they changed his game. He was never a spot-up shooter, and now you're sort of seeing what he can do when he's allowed to do both, when the system is asking him to get touches on the elbow, to post up, to face up, to create his own offense from time to time. And that makes him one of the more dangerous bigs, and that's how the Big Three era helped him. He became that guy who can hit jumpers and serve as a complementary scorer, and now, as we see, he still has that number one aggression where he's going to go after it and create his own shot. So I think the system was set up for him to sort of shoot those jumpers the past couple of years, and now that he doesn't have to, it makes him even more of a dynamic weapon.
Yeah, great point. We're Dan Favale, Bleacher Report, talking some NBA hoops here on the Club 52 hotline. Let's switch gears to the Western Conference. You brought up this guy's name before in our conversation, Russell Westbrook. He's out with injury. So is Kevin Durant. What's the game plan for Oklahoma City? Just try to wait for these guys to come back? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, that's all they can do. And I don't know how many people fall on which side of the fence. I know it's been a big debate, but this team's title window is closed, because the Thunder aren't willing to spend money, and now you're looking at they're not going to win this year. There's just no way. Even if they win 50 games, they're still looking at tough playoff opponents, and who's to say Durant and Westbrook aren't going to need to work off rust when they get back? They probably will. And then after this season, are they going to keep Reggie Jackson? I don't think they will. I don't think they want to pay for him. And then you're looking at a Western Conference in which the Warriors have had another year to develop, in which the Spurs might still be hanging around, in which the Rockets may have added another star. And then if you're looking out east at a LeBron team that's had a year to sort of acclimate to one another, when are they going to win a title in the next 2 years? I don't see it. That's going to make Kevin Durant's free agency very interesting. Have no idea where he would go if he left, but this team's title window, to me, is closed because of these injuries. This was the year for them to sort of get past the Spurs and to not have to worry about who's coming out of the Eastern Conference. And so that's going to hurt them a lot because the road to the playoffs is going to be much tougher. I think they'll inevitably make it, again, assuming Durant and Westbrook come back, but you're looking at a team that could be 10 to 15 games under 500 by the time that happens, and that's tough to come back from.
Yeah, wow. You know what? That'd be insane if it happens. The Clippers, what are they missing? Because, look, we know they do dunks with DeAndre Jordan in November, but what is this team missing to win an NBA championship? Because they've come up short the past couple of years.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it has to do with these unanswered questions that never sort of sway in their favor. You look at the bench, which was a strength during Chris Paul's first year. It wasn't so much of hasn't been so much of a strength since then. And they've added these guys. You look at Jordan Farmar, Spencer Haas. These are good glue guys, but they're missing that one big piece. And I think they sort of spent money on J.J. Redick when they shouldn't have, not that much money in my opinion, and they should have gotten so much more for Eric Bledsoe. That's hurt them as well, because they essentially removed their fourth star. They need that fourth star. It's not going to be Crawford. It's not going to be Redick, not at their ages, not with their games, and they need that fourth guy. Perhaps it's small forward where they're super thin, and until they get that fourth guy, and it's going to be interesting this summer with DeAndre Jordan being a free agent, but until they get that fourth guy and sort of polish off their roster, because they're still so shallow and so reliant on, let's say, 4 or 5 guys at best, that's not going to win them a title in the Western Conference. We've seen that depth and three-point shooting really help, and they don't have a lot of either at this point.
Is it kind of like, they need a Paul George type scorer? Is that the type of player they're missing when you say 3 like that?
Yeah, because if you look, who is the guy that's going to create their own offense at the 3 spot? And you're also looking at, we're in the age of stretch forwards. They don't really have any stretch forwards besides Spencer Haas. Blake Griffin's trying to develop his jumper, but is still not there yet. And so you need that guy who can create his own offense. You don't want to have to put it all on Paul, especially when your backup point guard situation is a mess. So you're absolutely right there. Paul George would be the extreme. I don't know where they're going to find somebody like that. Mm-hmm. But you need a Jamal Crawford at small forward, someone who can defend and create his own shot.
All right, who's more of a contender this year? Houston or Dallas in the Western Conference?
That's a tough question. It's a really good one. I'm going to have to roll with Dallas at this point because I'm pretty sure Dirk Nowitzki has father time, bound and gagged in his basement or something. And Chandler Parsons has looked really good over the last couple games. Tyson Chandler looks like he's actually trying on defense this season.
Oh.
And they just seem to have more depth on than the Rockets at this point. I mean, if you look at the Rockets, they lost their number 3 and 4 scorers. And you have to appreciate what James Harden is doing early on. I know he gets a lot of criticism, but he has carried that offense and sort of carried the Rockets thus far. But can he do that for 82 games? That's a lot to ask of just him and Howard. And even if you want to throw Ariza into there and say he's a featured scorer, they don't have that proven, established, potent depth. And I think that's going to hurt them in the long run, if not immediately.
Let me end with this. We're here with Dan Favale with the Bleacher Report. Follow him on Twitter, just as his name says. I grew up in Chicago, and I got to tell you something. I'm very proud of this guy named Anthony Davis. He is 21 years old. Hey, we get Wade, Rose, Anthony Davis. I'm very proud of all these guys. This guy is going to be top 10. He's going to be at Blake Griffin level, right? A top 10. This guy will be in all the commercials, right, in a couple months.
I feel like you're almost insulting him by linking him to Blake Griffin's ceiling, because that's how high I am on this kid. I've gotten in the habit of just coming up with these random names for him. I called him a galaxy gobbling god the other day because he does everything and he cannot be stopped. And I sort of get amusement out of people on TV who are now like, Anthony Davis could be a top 5 player by the end of the season, and they sort of look like left or right, like they just said something controversial. But this guy's the 3rd best player in the NBA right now, and it's not even close. And that's no disrespect to Chris Paul. But we're looking at someone who, by the end of the season, could realistically surpass Kevin Durant as the 2nd best player in the league. We've never seen anyone with his combination of skills. He's this blend of Tim Duncan, Hakeem, and Kevin Love, and just so many other guys that is just incredible. If the Pelicans allow him to sort of expand his range even further, I know he's shooting those face-up jumpers now, but if he starts shooting threes and they sort of allow him to serve as a secondary playmaker off the elbow, which I've been waiting for, this is a guy who's going to take over the NBA at some point. He's already number 3, and I can't stress enough that he does have the potential to surpass Kevin Durant this year, if not next.
Can the Pelicans become the new Thunder then? Like, are they going to be contenders or at least a playoff team because of him and how he's going to emerge?
I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do that this season just because the NBA is such a superstar-driven league that no matter who you have, you sort of need that second guy. In the Western Conference especially, I think if you put LeBron on like a Jazz team, I don't think the Jazz make the playoffs in the Western Conference because LeBron is. I think he helps from the point that if the Pelicans are willing to spend, players all of a sudden want to come play in New Orleans. And they're going to have some flexibility in the coming years with Eric Gordon coming off the books, Omer Rasheed coming off the books, Ryan Anderson hitting free agency. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next 2, maybe 3 summers, once they re-sign Davis to his extension especially, what sort of players he can attract. And that's what's ultimately going to help them. And I think the real question to ask here is, if you had told Chris Paul back in 2011 that he would be playing with the 3rd best player in the NBA in 2 years, would he have wanted to leave? I think the answer to that question would have been no.
Wait a minute. When is Anthony Davis's rookie contract over? Is it 3 years? When is it?
It's technically, I think it'll be over, or it's like loaded with options. But the way it works is they can sign him to an extension this summer, and rookies of his caliber, like you look at Kyrie Irving, you look at Paul George, they never not sign an extension. Greg Monroe is an extreme exception, but when a team is dangling 4 or 5 years and it's like $90 million at you, he's going to sign that. And rookies barely ever leave. Players coming off rookie deals, rarely ever leave their team. And that's good for the Pelicans because they can look at free agents saying, look, we're going to have this guy for another 4 or 5 years.
It's going to be awesome stuff. Great insight. His name is Dan Favale, Bleacher Report. Dan, I appreciate the time, and let's get you on again to talk some more NBA hoops.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Mark.